Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Welcome to RGV Aerial Photography's deep dive into images he captured this week around the shipyard and launch site in Boca Chica, Texas. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Starbase Weekly, episode 89. This is Mauricio, and I'll pass this along to Astro Joel.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We got a great show lined up for you today. And just want to say thanks for joining us. Pass it on to Zach.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Glad to be with you again on this Saturday. And as always, we have more guests with us this week. Last week we had, I think, Nate and Ryer from the Ring Watchers. This week we have Ryan Hansen Space joining us. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on the show for the first time. And we also have DJ, and he's known by DJ Esmeralda on Twitter, for those of you who are possibly following him. And if you're not, make sure you follow him on there as well. Thanks for joining us, DJ.
Hey, Zach. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here for the first time. So let's dig in on this Starbase Weekly update.
All right. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we have a ton to talk about. As always, there's never-ending motion going on at Starbase. The second half of the week was pretty quiet, I would say, but the first half of the week was pretty busy. So we do have a ton to cover. And as always, let's go ahead and start over at the Massey's test site. We haven't had as much action at the Massey site, but they are still doing a lot of work over here right now. At first we kind of thought that the expansion was relatively finished over here as far as like the actual testing capabilities that they have currently. But we think there may be a possibility that, SpaceX is getting ready for yet another phase of expansion out here. So one of the big things that we noticed this week was that SpaceX started to move the tent that was over in this location down to a new pad down here. And I don't know, in my opinion, that may seem like kind of like a minuscule thing to point out, but I think this is the start of clearing out all of this area over here. So one of the things that I've kind of been speculating and expecting is that there will be another test stand over in this location at some point. And in particular, and this is actually funny because Indy has asked this question a lot, whether or not they would ever do static fire testing here. And, for the most part, we've always kind of thought no, but I don't know. I think that situation may be about to change. There's only a few places if SpaceX did create a static fire test stand where it could go. And one of those locations is here. So we're going to touch on this a little bit more when we get to the Sanchez site. But assuming that they have possibly 2 static fire test stands under construction, they've got to have 2 different locations for them. So expecting one of those possibly is going to be right in this spot right here. What do you guys think about that?
So I think, what do you think about that? Like, it could be booster static fire here?
Yeah, that sounds pretty aggressive, I think. But, as I was saying, like there's really, if there's going to be 2 of them, they can only either be at the launch site or here. So, I think that there's a very strong possibility that it might end up going here. Because one of the things that you would need in order to do this especially in this location, I mean, you can just tell by looking at it. You're not going to do a static fire test on a booster in the same way that you do on the launch mount because, well, there's just too much infrastructure out here. So, you know, you would have to build a huge wall in between the this area and the actual tank farm and test stands. Or you could just build a flame trench so that you can direct it to one side. I'm not sure which side that would be, but that is one of the more interesting aspects of it. You know, for one thing, if we look at this image right here, there is the on the other side of the river is Mexico, essentially. So this is farmland that is owned. I believe there's an owner of this. There's some houses down here. So this is active farmland over there, which puts them very, very close to that action. So that is one concern that I'm curious about how that would work here. But you know, ideally, I guess you wouldn't want to direct it that way. You may direct it to one of these two sides. So I guess there is a concern of, like, you know, the flames and what would happen if flames are reaching over into these areas. But with most flame trenches, you usually have a pretty significant water deluge system. And so that should mitigate that issue. I guess the question is, you know, getting approval to fire in either of those two directions. It is possible to fire down in this direction. I just think that's slightly less likely, given that you're pushing that steam plume over all of this equipment. So yeah, I don't know. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing that's nice to point out is the fact that right now booster testing is pretty much confined to the availability of the launch mount at the orbital site. And at some point, they're going to be speeding up production of the boosters to where they're probably going to need another location to, at the very least, perform a spin prime on a booster. And I don't think they're really going to want to do that. Well, they can't do that on, you know, a can crusher since it will involve not having engines at that point in time. But they will need another place to probably have a test stand capable of at least performing a spin prime. And if you're going to go through the infrastructure to allow fueling of a booster so you can conduct a spin prime, it would probably be ideal to also design it to be capable of doing a static fire. And like I said, availability on the launch mount is probably going to be a difficult thing to work around, especially as they mount and demount, you know, boosters. They don't want to be constantly doing that over and over again. So I think having another location to static fire a booster would probably be beneficial. It's basically the same thing they did with the ships back when they were doing the high altitude tests. You know, they built two test stands because they had a cadence where they needed to test multiple vehicles at a time. And as they ramp up the production, I mean, we see them. You know, obviously we'll get there, but you know, Star Factory is coming online. They're going to be expanding that pretty drastically, and there's going to be a lot of boosters. There's going to be a lot of ships, and then they're going to need a place to test these. So, in my opinion, I don't think it's out of the question that they can't static fire something here, especially if they want to kind of move a lot of that preliminary testing away from the launch site and bring it to somewhere like Massey's. It's not a problem that they can't solve. It really comes down to the engineering. You know, if they want to build a berm, you know, with some sort of a directional, you know, diverter, if they want to have, you know, maybe two of them here pointed in opposite directions, they could do that. Maybe one for a ship, maybe one for a booster. You know, obviously we've seen some parts being developed that we will touch on here in a little bit, but there are some indications that show, as you know, as well as using a little bit of analytics to kind of understand, you know, maybe the direction that SpaceX is going with this, and they're going to need somewhere to test a booster. So if they are indeed clearing this area out back here, it's, you know, usually a sign that something is about to change. So I think we'll need to keep our eyes peeled and kind of see what's going on back here.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of this spot is the proximity to the river. So they do have a very small water treatment facility back here, which could easily become larger. So one of the things that you would need for that kind of test stand is a lot of water, because you're going to have, obviously a deluge system involved in that. This would kind of be, I think, similar to what we see in Stennis. I'm still not sure whether the flame trench part of it will be above ground or below ground. One of the problems with going below ground here is the same issue that you have at the launch complex, which is the local water table. So, as you can see, the river right here is pretty high. So, if you dig down, I imagine you're going to start hitting water pretty quickly. So an above ground structure might be more ideal in that situation. And I'm kind of imagining, a ramp both going down and coming back up. So you're basically shooting the flames into the air at a relatively steep angle. Like, I don't know, 45 degrees is probably a little excessive, but somewhere between 30 to 45 degrees, a ramp going upwards, I think kind of makes a lot of sense. And I guess the question at that point would be, how big is this thing going to be? And we have seen the actual ring structure, which the booster would likely sit on. So we'll, as Ryan said, touch on that here in a bit. But yeah, I think it's a bit of healthy speculation. A lot of people on Twitter don't seem to, well, I think most people seem to be on board with it. There are a few people who don't see it as being necessary, but for one, with Falcon 9, like if we compare this to the Falcon 9 program, like they do static fire test every single Falcon 9, not necessarily before launch, but after production. So after a Falcon 9 booster is completed, they send it to McGregor and do full duration static fire tests on it. And I think we checked and it was like averaging like 77 seconds for static fire tests with boosters, with Falcon 9 boosters. And right now we're kind of limited to 10 seconds on a super heavy booster on the launch mount, because that's about how much water you're able to supply to that launch mount. So, in my opinion, I think at least possibly being able to do longer duration tests along with, testing at the same time. So you have, like Ryan said, something on the launch mount, something on a test stand, just so you can do consecutive tests without having building up a huge backlog of boosters that need testing, which technically is kind of happening right now. Like we are waiting for booster 11 to begin its cryo testing, and I think, and I said this last week, but I think they're getting closer to it. We can see the test stand down here, which has been complete for I think about a week or two, but I think we were like mostly waiting now for this booster QD to be finished, and without being able to see it from the ground, I think we do have a ground view that may show it pretty well, but it looks to be pretty complete right now. That's kind of cool. Like, it's nice having a actual booster QD here instead of just hanging the hoses from straps, which they did on the cryo stand at the launch site. So yeah, this is a pretty nice test stand, and hopefully, like I said, we'll see this actually move to the Sanchez site soon, so they can put booster 11 on top of it and then transport it back. That's gonna be pretty interesting to watch.
So here's a question for you, Zach. One idea that I've had for a little while regarding this kind of shuffle of test stands to pick up boosters and whatnot, I wonder if we would ever see something kind of like the high bay here that would allow them to roll a booster to the Massey's site and then use a bridge crane to actually lift it off of the SPMTs and then roll in one of these structural stands underneath it and lower it down. That way they're not having to shuffle these ginormous test stands back and forth across the road, adding to the wear and tear. Do you think they might ever do something like that here?
Well,
purely just for lifting the boosters and maybe minimal work, nothing actually stacking a booster here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a permanent crane I'm almost thinking like more of a tower crane instead of a bridge crane, because that would be a very, very tall bridge crane. If they do end up with a static fire test stand here, they're probably going to need a crane in order to lift the booster onto that test stand. So with that being said, that crane could then also be used for this as well too. So I don't know, maybe transporting this back and forth might just be a temporary thing. Because, while it is convenient, it does require 2 road closures instead of 1. And, they usually move these at night when it's like super late at night when there's not too many cars on the road. But again, as you mentioned, the additional wear and tear on the road, this is a pretty heavy structure. And then you also put the booster on top of it, plus the, 160 tons of counterweights or more. That becomes a pretty heavy structure to be transporting. It's probably like, I don't know, 450 tons total. So, I think having a crane here at some point would make a lot of sense. I don't think you need it necessarily for the ships. This is a bit lighter, but it is possible that they could do that for the ships as well too, because having to maneuver this into position every single time probably becomes a pain. They do have positions on the ground for this to mount to. I think there may be even bolts sticking up out of these embeds. I'm not really sure, but I imagine you probably don't want to be constantly moving this if you don't have to. If you have a crane, then that kind of makes things a lot easier. So what else do we have here? We still have this structure down here, which we're waiting to see progress on, and they haven't even begun to deliver the steel for this yet. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit before we actually start seeing them work on that. But we're still keeping our eyes out on that. And other than that, I don't think there's really much else happening over at Massey's. They have started to frame out some areas where they're about to pour some more concrete. And we're still waiting on the payload section, the payload test article to appear at Massey's. But they seem to be taking their time on that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's really anything else happening at Massey's right now, unless you guys.
Here's a question, Zach. Noticing kind of the piping they've got installed here toward the top of the frame, you've got the white tent with the red crate next to it. Seemingly the area here between kind of the jog and the pipes is kind of empty for now. Is there any speculation on what might actually go in here? Could there be like a expansion for, more tanks possibly put there in the future? Or what do you see might go there?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. So one of the things, if they are doing static fire testing here, or even just doing spin prime tests, which I don't think it would be limited to that, but you would need room for additional methane tanks. The one thing getting in the way of that is this little shack right here. But other than that, this would kind of be a perfect area to put those additional tanks at. The other thing to note is that, they could also expand these. So right now, as far as we know, all of these are nitrogen. There is a possibility that the ones back here are liquid oxygen, but we haven't seen the labels on it since they moved them. So it's really tough to tell what those are. But as I mentioned last week, they have expanded this a little bit. So it looks like in the future, they may add additional tanks right here. But you're kind of limited on space. I wonder why they didn't place these closer together. I think that maybe initially when they started setting this up, they weren't necessarily expecting to do what they're about to do here. So that could be a factor in it. But I think that they're definitely going to need more tanks somewhere. There is a possibility that, if you do have methane tanks, they could go back in this area, like in this corner, but they haven't really started to do anything on that side yet. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. Astro Joe, did we have any questions from the audience on Massive.
We've got a few, but I want to thank a bunch of generous folks here first. We had 3 folks before the stream even started. Barry Wood gifted a membership. Jim Cavett gifted a membership. John Dopker gifted a membership. As the stream started, Daniel Hogben gifted 5 memberships, as well as Methane Man gifting 5 memberships. We had some super chats jumping on the train. John Dopker, $10. Who else wants to ride the rails on the rocket train? DeMars, 10 Canadian dollars. I'm on board. Steve Coates, $1.99. Couple bucks for the cause. Jim Cavett, $10. I'm on board. As for a first question, Brian Crabtree asks, could it be for the single engine test firing for maintenance and repair rather than full booster / ship testing?
For maintenance and repair. Well, I mean, we already have 3 stands so far that are currently going to be used for engine work, and we'll, I guess, probably touch on those in a second. I did want to actually show something on this. Somebody just sent me something. Hold on, give me a second. I just want to show this really quick before we switch over. So Donald just sent this to me, and this is an example of a type of flame trench that we could see. So this is like pretty easy to do, I would say. It's not super underground, but it is still below the water grade would be. So yeah, this is a type of flame trench that you could use to direct it out to one side. And something like this, I mean, you can see the footprint of it based on just the size of the vehicles here. I think something like this would easily fit at Massey's. But as far as the test stands being used for work, like I'm guessing that would probably end up being inside of the Mega Bay. That would be 5 large work stands inside of the Mega Bay, and I don't know if you can fit that while also having your turntables for stacking and transport stands in there as well too. Although I don't know if we'll actually see boosters on transport stands in the Mega Bay anymore once they get these engine install stands in there. But I guess on that note, maybe we should go ahead and swap over to Sanchez. I'm sure you had one more question. So how about I'll circle back and answer that question here in a second. Did we have another one?
Yeah, Crane Man asks, could they use the BFC and move the boosters stands only at Massey's?
So this is the BFC right here. This is a crane that SpaceX purchased a very long time ago. And as far as we know, this was initially meant for lifting Falcons, Falcon 9 boosters, and potentially even second stage vehicles. But I don't know. I don't think this crane may have some limitations on the weight that it's able to lift. And I think that a 200 to 250 ton booster is probably a little heavy for this thing, but I don't know the actual specs on this. But it could be they've been holding on to this for a long time. I think waiting for a buyer, or if they do have a buyer, waiting for that buyer to pick it up. But if they, are holding on to it for another reason so they could actually use it, that would be very interesting to see. They would need 2 of them.
Right. 55 Chevy guy asks, comparing the impact for closures for a static fire, how would Massey's compare to the launch site?
That's a good question. What do you guys think?
That's interesting. Yeah. So I think it shouldn't be necessary to close the road because that will end up on the same spot again. Like Massey's was constructed to be or purchased to be for cryo testing at first. So if you put road closures again, you're going to have the same problem as before on so many closures that are not the best thing for Brownsville and Villagers. So yeah, it is not a really good thing, I think. So maybe it is not needed. It is far away though.
Yeah, let me I'll go ahead and pull up a Google Earth image here in the background.
So, real quick, Zach, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So Massey's from Highway 4 is 1.4 kilometers, and the launch site. So I guess if we measure from the launch site to the build site, which is the closest that humans can be, right? That would be a little bit, just to give us an idea of. It would be 2.29 kilometers from the launch site to the build site. Usually when they do static fires, they allow people at the village, right? So I would say it's a little bit shorter distance from Highway 4. They might have to shut it down, if anything, but let's see here. I mean, it's about 1.82 from the road where the sheriff gets posted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's questionable if they will have to close the road.
It may depend on what is convenient. In the situation with the launch site, it's easy for them to close it up toward, I guess, where they do at the edge of the village. They're on Highway 4, just to kind of keep everybody from going down. In the case of Massey's, it might be okay for them just to close, up at the T intersection with the highway, and maybe that's enough distance for a minimally fueled booster to do something there. It might just come down to how much fuel they have and if that is indeed far enough away for people to be.
Yeah, I would say one thing that I would like to see that could be a possibility is so the way that Falcon 9s are tested at McGregor, they actually use a cap similar to the Can Crusher to actually hold it down from above. And, I think something like that could be necessary in this situation because, in order to maybe reduce the amount of area that they need for closure, they could just use less fuel. So right now, when they do static fire tests on boosters, they already they don't fill the methane tanks up all the way. I think on the last one they did it probably about a quarter of the way, I want to say. But even that is not necessarily required, I guess, for actually testing those engines. I think it more has to do with trying to weigh the booster down, reduce the thrust to weight ratio as much as possible. So that's part of the reason why they completely fill the LOX tank and then add as much methane as they do. When they do spin prime tests, they put even less methane in that upper tank. So by having a cap on top of the booster where you're actually holding it down, you could theoretically be able to reduce the amount of fuel that you need, and then also reduce the radius, the expected radius of an anomaly, I guess.
Yeah.
Any more questions on Massey's?
I got a couple that we kind of already touched on, but I wanted to thank Jacqueline for a gifted membership and Rocket Profit $10 with a choo-choo, and Kenneth Coates donated via PayPal $20, Sunny Biscuits, Flight Fuel, and Bug Spray. Joel Burnett asks, could Massey's hold a rocket garden?
It could. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to that. I was going to try and show some ground images to see if we could see that booster QD. But, well, at this point, there's becoming less and less room for it. Right now, they have this little parking lot down here. I suppose they could do it along this edge right here. But they do need to keep this enough space for cryo tankers to make full loops through here. So that would be one limitation. I guess if you put it in this back corner and then you have your flame trench in this direction, that could be a possibility. But one of the things about the Rocket Garden is that it's not just for storing vehicles. They actually also do work on them there. So I feel like it's a little bit less likely that they would want that a Rocket Garden at this location where you can't actually work on them.
Agreed. Lab Experiment asks, any chance SpaceX would build up the ground level 20 or 30 meters to battle the water level?
Yeah, I mean that's one possibility is bringing the flame trench above ground instead of having it below ground. So if we look at that image that I was showing a little bit ago, not this one, but giving away stuff for later. Dang it. I think I may have accidentally closed out of it. Let's see. Was this it? No. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Okay, here it is. Sorry. Yeah, so something like this could theoretically, all you need to do is just build the ground up several meters. Probably, I don't know, like 15 meters probably, and then your walls would be above ground, and then you wouldn't have to worry about actually needing a anything special to like keep this anchored in the ground. So something like this would have some sort of buoyancy with the water beneath it, where it's actually trying to like push it up like a bathtub. But yeah, building it above ground would help a lot in that regard.
And that's a nice segue into the last question that I have from Fly By Night is, why would they build up Massey's for static fire duty when they have the suborbital site, which is also not next to the border and the river and can deflect the plume over the marshland?
Well, like I said, initially when they started building the first one, the first of these stands, and I'm just going to go ahead and move us over to Sanchez. So when they started building the first of these stands, it's down in this location. I initially thought there was only going to be one, but now there's two of them. So, you just probably simply can't fit two of these next to each other at Massey's. Maybe you could, but I feel like that's a lot of space requirement. To build two separate flame trenches. I doubt you'd want them sharing a flame trench. But we're kind of looking at where the work is actually happening right now. And right now, the only groundwork that is super visible right now is at the suborbital site. And so that's why I'm kind of assuming one of them will go there. Cool. Any more questions?
We're ready to rock and roll and move on, buddy.
All right. Well, just mentioning the ground fab building, still in the same condition as last week. Not many changes to that. They are doing some work in there. We can see the man lifts in there, but we haven't actually seen them do anything inside of here. So that's kind of just sitting there waiting to be finished. But now we get to talk about the actual engine install stands, which are really cool. So Mauricio actually got this, took this right before they started moving this. So at first they moved it out just in front of the Sanchez entrance. And before they actually moved this, they transported this platform right here. And so we're going to actually sneak ahead a little bit and just check out something inside of the Mega Bay so we can see what's going on in there. Let's see, I got to get the right image. Maybe this one will show it. Let's see. So I'm trying to find, I know there's an image that can see inside of there pretty well, and I'm not sure. Maybe this one. Either without changing the coloring on this here, let's see, maybe this will do it. There we go. So in the back left corner of the Mega Bay, you can see that they have these stilts back there. So these were the ones that were initially right outside of the white structure at the Sanchez site. And so essentially what they did here is they put all these stilts in, and then they moved that platform in afterwards. So this platform went in between those stilts, and then after that they transported this into the megabase. So that kind of explains a lot of the theories that we had before, which is that this is essentially a platform where they can use to elevate the engines. So it's like just a lift, essentially, place the engines on top and then lift them up into position. And I do have some cool renders that kind of show how this works, which I accidentally showed y'all a little bit earlier. But so let's start off with this one. So this is from Chameleon Circuit. I can probably post a link to their Twitter in the... Actually, I can't because I don't have the chat open. But maybe somebody can post the link to Chameleon Circuit's Twitter account in the chat, Indy or Astrogen possibly. But yeah, so this is what the actual white stand looks like with a booster sitting on top of it with engines installed. So you can see that the engines actually hang down below the bottom of the structure. And you can also see up here where the actual the hold down clamps are. So there's only 10 of them. The engine positions in between those locations do not have hold down clamps. So only half of the positions are actually being used to hold the booster down. And by doing that, you're allowing for access to the engine bays inside of here. And I think we have another view kind of showing that as well. Hold on. It's probably in my Discord server. I'll have to search for that.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
Should we maybe go over why an engine installation stand might be a necessity for the bays?
Yeah.
So I guess something that's maybe a little bit lesser known is that the transport stands that we see the boosters put on, when they go back and forth between the different sites, it's actually not tall enough for a booster with engines to have, say, a replacement center engine rolled underneath it and then lifted up. In the past, when they've put the engines on the boosters, they've had to kind of strategically choose which engines to install and kind of do it from a middle out, from the middle outward, or even from the far back side toward kind of one of the holes. And actually, on the stands, if you kind of look closely at them, there are some they're basically like little arc pieces that are bolted on, where they actually remove some of those in order to actually slide engines underneath the booster. So ultimately, it's kind of a pain to change engines on a booster that already has engines on it, which is why we've seen them in the past use the launch mount. So obviously, if the launch mount has a booster on it and they're wanting to do testing, and there's another booster that they also want to start testing on, if they're having to swap engines on a booster, they don't really want to take up, space on the launch mount, and having to do that. So say one of the center engines needs to be, looked at or changed out. Then if they're back in the mega bay, they may have to pull off, 4 or 5 engines actually just to get that one engine out, which isn't ideal. So these stands should help them install engines much quicker in the mega bays, as well as kind of pick and choose if they need to do maintenance on a specific engine, they can do that. And since they're seemingly going to have 2 of these, they could basically be doing engine installation in parallel within either of the bays that they want to. So that should increase the time that it takes to install these engines by quite a bit.
Yeah, and they actually, I think, looks like they're going to have 3 of these. So we do have parts for a third one right here. And I honestly maybe would not be surprised to see a 4th one, although that would, as I said before, take up a ton of space, having 4 of them. But having 3 is really good. That's a lot. That's a lot. You can have 3 boosters that you're doing final outfitting on. You may be doing engine install on one while you're doing the install of the actual skirts, the skirt protection on another, or just doing maintenance on a third one. So yeah, these are super convenient. And I actually want to. I don't know if Mauricio got an image of it before it moved. Mauricio, did you have pictures of it before it moved? Like when it was sitting out in the outside of the Sanchez site?
No, that was Starship Gazer, I think, or Chief.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see if I can pull that up on Twitter here in the background, because there's another really cool feature that I want to mention on that. I don't know if he posted that to Twitter. I don't think he did. I think he posted it on YouTube. Let's check. Sorry, y'all. Not fully prepared for this. Here we go.
Yeah, there was a video out there of. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool because it shows you the inside of it. So you can see, and this was a question last week that people had. These are essentially electric. I think these are electrically driven pistons, so that removes the clamps in and out. And then on the inside, you can see that they have these folding platforms. And so once the booster is in position, those platforms can actually fold down so that they're able to walk on top of those and access the interior of the engine skirt, which is really convenient. And let me go back to that other image. Yeah, so you can actually see those down here. They basically fall right below the bottom of the engine skirt, and so you can essentially walk on top of that engine skirt once it's installed. But yeah, I mean, having access to all of this stuff in here, all of the additional pipes that they have to install in those outer 20 engines becomes a lot more accessible. So this is a really awesome structure. And we have some pictures of what it looks like in different states. So this is what it would look like before the engines are installed. And this is just showing the actual skirt section of the booster. So you can see how that hangs down there. This is actually really cool. So I imagine this stuff will also be installed while it's on here. You have a lot of clearance on the sides for these pieces to be lifted up. Overall, I think this is a really nice change that they've made, because it definitely, as Ryan said, will speed things up for them. But back to the Sanchez site, now that we know for sure what these are. Oh, hold on. I did want to show another render or animation from, this one's from Chrome Kiwi. And this shows the actual platform. So once the platform's on the ground, you can place the engines on top of it and then just lift them up into position. So I think, initially I was hoping that we would see a stand that could actually install all 33 engines at the same time, but that's, I don't know, a little bit excessive. I don't think this thing is strong enough to put 33 engines on top of it and lift it up. So doing them a few at a time like this probably makes a little more sense, but this is a really cool animation, kind of just showing how that elevator system works.
And they likely will complete the floor on that. Like right now, the triangle sections are cut out, and those are where kind of those connection points are that are attached to the kind of the stilts, as you call them, Zach. We'll probably see that get finished off. That way they can put an engine there as well, but they've likely left it off just for right now while they get all that stuff connected together.
Right.
I've got a very relevant question to this animation here right now. Crane Man asks, could the white mesh panels fit between the stilts under the white booster ring for safety reasons while raising the Raptor mount elevator plate, creating a safety cage while lifting Raptors?
Yeah, so right now this image is showing 5 stilts, and we actually are not 100% sure how many there are. There could be as many as 10, but it's tough to see from that aerial image that I was showing earlier. But the screens that he's talking about, are right here. Hold on. I'm like swapping between images in the background. So these screens, and I maybe have a closer up image of it. Yeah, so the screens right here is what he's talking about. And yeah, I would say these do look like they're probably related to that. I don't know if there's like doorways that actually open up so you can swing them out of the way when you're bringing an engine in or something. But yeah, I feel like these are more than likely being used on that structure.
Given
Craneman
that they'll be
followed up
able
with
to.
that. Sorry about that. Craneman
No, you go ahead.
followed up with that. 2 panels have opening doors like the one under the white tent.
I'm assuming you may be talking about this one right here.
That one, and then I think the left of the white tent. It's actually open right now, possibly.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. So they actually slide out. That's kind of cool.
So yeah, given that this will lower low enough for them to put, an engine in the middle of it and then lift it up, it's likely that they may limit one side as the entry to this, where they can just, wheel in however many they want, and then they kind of have these cage around the outside just as a safety zone. They may not need more than maybe 1 or 2 openings, possibly.
Agreed. Yeah, and not only a safety zone, but it also keeps debris, like, because there's, with the wind blowing through the front door of the mega bay, then you kind of have a lot of dirt potentially being blown into there. So helps it to keep it a little bit more of like a clean environment as well too, while adding that safety feature as well. But yeah, those are pretty cool. I'm surprised that they don't all have that ability to open up. It seems like there's, so I guess just 2 of them then, and then the rest are not able to do that. But yeah, so when we mentioned these ones down here, they just simply, we know that these are for engine install, and this one has a similar design, except for the fact that there are 20 positions for the hold down clamps, and there's also holes in the side of it for potentially Raptor QDs to be mounted into. The interesting thing about it is, I always try and poke holes in my own theories. There aren't holes in all of these plates, but it is possible that they can be cut out afterwards. But it does make this a little bit confusing on whether or not it is what I think it is. But, we have not heard any other theories about what this could possibly be used for other than for engine install. And we do have some nice ground images of this as well, too.
There is precedence for them cutting out large holes from, steel structures they've already assembled. And all of the holes for the Raptor QDs on the OLM were originally solid. They did not have holes. They cut those once they were on site. So there is a precedence for them to cut, a manufactured, piece like this after the fact.
Yeah. And, on that note, I would expect it to, take a lot longer to finish the structure than it did with the other one, because if it is used for static fire testing, then there's going to be a lot of pipe work installed on this. And obviously with it not being as deep as the launch mount, the pipe work will not be able to fit on the inside of the structure. So it will have to be on the outside. And so with that said, there's probably a lot of work left to be done on this. But you can kind of see that, number one, they've started painting it. And this is actually the same color that the launch mount was painted initially. When it showed up, like when all the different sections showed up, this is the exact same color that they used on that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's see. So let me go back to the aerials. And DJ, I think you were saying something before as well.
Oh, yes. So I was wanting to point out that maybe they can install, I don't know if all 13 center engines at once, but a good amount. So maybe they can install like 5 engines at once. That will speed up things a lot. Just mostly the same as you said, but yeah. I don't know if if it can hold up so many engines, because Raptor 2s are one ton, 1.6 tons, I think. So yeah, it
Yeah,
could
I
be
mean,
easily.
just looking at the framework of it, I mean, it does seem pretty sturdy, but yeah, I mean, if the stand underneath the launch mount can't hold more than 2 Raptors, I find it hard to believe that this one could. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately though, on that note, we'll really never know unless somehow we get an image from Elon, or during the next Everyday Astronaut tour of Starbase, if they happen to be installing engines at that time, that would actually be kind of cool. But yeah, it really pretty much speculation at this point on as far as how many engines they can lift up at one time.
Yeah, they wouldn't want to do too many, because you get, too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say, because these will still need to be bolted to the bottom of the booster. They'll have to route pipes and do all the connections. So, they'll have to space them out if they want to do multiple at once, would be my guess. Otherwise, you're just going to be tripping over each other trying to, tighten down all the connections. So, likely never all 33 at one time. They could probably split it up into a couple of groups, possibly, if they want to do multiple engines at once.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And let's see here. I want to check this out really quick. So someone in the background was saying that there's actually enough parts out here for 3 of these black stands, and I'm not sure. I think yeah, it may actually possibly be for 3. I don't know. So they're missing. It's tough to say how many they're missing in here. But yeah, there's enough down here that it may actually be a 3rd one as well too. Oh, then you have some more over here. So yeah, that complicates things. It's going to be interesting. I'm still holding on to my original thought that these could be static fire related. One way or another, I'm expecting to see that, so we'll have to keep our eyes on it. And if it ends up not being that way, then I'll just have to eat some major crow on this one. But we do know, that. So with having engine install stands, you have specific stands just for cryo testing and puck shucking, and then you also have the transport stands. And as far as we know, they are not in the process of, well, yeah, like I said, as far as we know, they're not building new transport stands. I mean, I suppose it is possible that this could be a redesign of the transport stands. But I don't know. I can't really see a reason to redesign them. But yeah, other than that, we don't really have any other ideas of what these could possibly be used for. So, cool. So elsewhere at the Sanchez site, all of these stairways that stair sections that we saw last week have been moved to the launch site and have been getting lifted into place over the last week or so. So we'll see that a little bit more when we get to the launch site. They've made a lot of progress installing those. And let's move over to this area. So near the air separation plant, they have finished that water tank. I think it was actually finished last week, but we can definitely say for sure that it's finished now. And they also have 2 smaller water tanks. So these are bottom and top sections. And it looks like there's a small pad for them right here. So I think these may actually go on top of that pad. I'm starting to wonder if this is part of like a water treatment facility. So, they do have the water tank. Let me see. Every image that I'm clicking on, it's right just out of sight. Let's see here. Yeah, so they do have this water tank. I think this is SN2. And so this is a rather small one, but I think it could be possible that they may actually be constructing, an additional water treatment facility where they won't have to drive as far when they're replenishing the water at the launch site. So I guess we'll have to keep our eyes on this. But as far as I can tell right now, it mostly seems like this is related to the air separation plant.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, in other news, Ship 28 is still getting its final touches with all the engines and whatnot. And they have been installing, they've been doing a lot of work on the tiles this week. So let's see if I can find a ground image that shows this well. Starship Gazer actually got a really cool video showing them do a suction test on it, but it's not a public video. It's currently unlisted, so I won't be able to show that here today. But I should be able to actually get some good images of 28. So let's see. Looking at this from the ground right here, you can see that a lot of the tiles have been removed. And so essentially what they did is they had a suction device that they they get up on a man basket, attach the suction device to the tiles, and when they're actually pulling the tiles, then they pull on the tiles, and if they come off, then they just trash them. So essentially all of these locations where tiles are removed are areas that failed that suction test. So that's really interesting. I'm slightly concerned, I guess, in some ways about whether or not they did that same test on 25, like if they would end up with the same result of having tiles that fall off easily. But I think that they probably don't want to do that test on 25 because I don't know, possibly the likelihood of it actually re-entering may be so low that it's not really worth it. And they probably have more confidence in those future launches with 28 and above that they actually want to make sure that it's pretty much perfect. But on that note, they have replaced, or they've finished doing all of the tiles on 25. And there were some damaged tiles that we saw here last week, and they did not replace them, but they did, I guess, some like refinishing work on it. Let me see if I can find one. Let's see here. I feel like this is maybe one of them right here.
Yeah, all of the gray thing is like that epoxy or something like that.
Yeah, it's like some sort of epoxy. So there was large, or not large, but some patches of black that like had the black coating that had been ripped free. And so instead of replacing the entire tiles, they put some sort of epoxy on top or ceramic coating or something like that, and kind of just painted over it. It looks like there's a better example of this on here. Let me see if I can find one.
There's some on the top right, on the close to the top.
This one?
There, and a little bit above that. There you go.
Yeah. So these are, oh wow, that one's looks pretty bad. But I mean, that should get the job done, I guess, for the actual integrated flight tests. Like they don't need to be perfect. But the good news is, with having all of these tiles completed, then we should see Ship 25 maybe move out next week. I don't think we have any closures yet, though, do we?
No, not yet, but should come out really soon, I hope.
Yeah.
Something to note with these tiles is that, this is a process that's relatively new to SpaceX, with kind of tiling over these lift points, and clearly there's room for improvement here. I'm sure they're already working on a process improvement, because if there's one thing that SpaceX has exhibited, it's they're very good with process improvement. So I imagine we will likely see some form of a platform in like a corner of either the high bay or something that will allow them to kind of back one of these ships up to it, and it will be like right at the right height for them to start covering these lift points, because I don't think these lift points are going anywhere. So they'll likely come up with something to make this process a little bit easier and less prone to kind of damaging the tiles around.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing if they have, once they build another mega bay or another structure other than the high bay, they'll have more workstations that they could put a permanent tile station in there instead of having to constantly erect and disassemble scaffolding for that purpose. So let's see. There's let me see if I can find a good image of 25 from the front. I don't think I have one from the front. Actually, hold on. Let's see.
There is one towards the beginning of the gallery,
Okay.
but it's just the top half from Highway 4. I didn't go out to the mudflats for this.
Okay. Maybe I can kind of see it from this angle. Not really. Let me actually check from the air then. See if I can see it from the aerial view. Did they spin 25 around? I could have sworn it was turned the other way before.
Let me check. And did you saw the cutouts on the
Yeah,
engine
that's what I'm
section?
looking for. I just don't know if I can show them on here or not.
Let me check on lab's camera.
Yeah, I don't really have an angle that will show it. No, that's definitely can't see it from there. If you can find an image of it, then you can send it to me in live comms. But until then, I guess I'll move on. I guess. Let's see here. So yeah, anything else at Sanchez? Oh wait, you can almost see it from this angle, but just barely. So there's new vents that they installed down here on the bottom, and so they're actually very similar to the ones that are on the booster. Essentially, they have vents on these. They have vents on these that essentially allow it to purge out the aft skirt, just like they do on the booster. They're very tough to see in this image, though. But they're like right down here. You can kind of see one of them right there, I think. But yeah, they've been still making modifications on 25. So, just like Booster 9, they did make last minute modifications on it. So it's, not fully finished. I think it is by now fully finished. But I think we'll finally see 25 move to the launch site sometime this week. And hopefully we'll maybe get a wet dress rehearsal or a full stack cryo test.
Zach, I'm not sure we could see that image of 25.
Oops, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, they're kind of like right down here. Really hard to see from this perspective. But yeah, so let's go ahead and move over to the ring yard. But Astro Joe, I want to make sure we don't have any questions on Sanchez site first or donations.
Yeah, we've got some in no real particular order, but I want to thank Sharpie for a $10 super chat. Enjoying the show. Much kudos to the RGV team. Jim Cavett, $5. Thanks to the RGV area photography for another great week of photography. Had an earlier super chat from Taryn McKeegie, $20. What do you guys think the ratio of ships to boosters will be over the next 2 years? How many booster static fires do you think SpaceX will do versus ship? And how many booster test stands do you think they will need versus ship? That's a long one, sorry.
Anyone else want to answer that one?
Yeah, it's purely too far in the future to even bother to answer. Sorry,
Can you
Taryn.
repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, what do you guys think the ratio of ships to boosters will be over the next 2 years? How many static fires do you think SpaceX will do versus ship? And how many booster test stands do you think they need versus ship?
I was muted, sorry. So, my guess will be that they are going to double the amount of ships and boosters that are currently right now. And in the future, like a year from now, they might get started with recovery of the booster. So maybe not reflight them, but maybe after B20 or something like that, we might have less boosters and a lot of ships, because ship recovery will be very difficult right now. So I know, what do you think, Ryan or Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. We're definitely going to probably see boosters recovered. I would guess maybe booster somewhere around 14 or 15, possibly. It depends on how this next flight goes, for sure. That'll definitely set the tone for like what we should expect. If they do have a successful soft touchdown with booster 9, I don't know if they would plan to do emulate what they would do on the chopsticks, as far as like, bring it in at that same speed, or if they're or not. But if that's the case, then they're essentially going to be practicing for catching boosters with booster 9 during that soft touchdown. And if not, then we'll definitely see that with booster 10. And I can't imagine that they'll probably want to waste more than 3 boosters while they're doing that initial testing. So yeah, I think that by 14 or 15, we'll probably see them do the first catch attempt on the tower. And after that, they may need twice as many ships as they need boosters. We really haven't seen any indication that they're moving towards catching ships yet. It doesn't really seem necessary right now, because it's going to be a while before they're reach a point where they're actually performing missions where they probably want to recover the ships.
I've got a series about 7 or 8 more questions. We can kind of rapid fire due to time constraints, but I want to thank Donald Bierlin for 5 gifted memberships. Igor Skorzinski, I'm sorry if I butchered that. Zach, do you think Booster 10 will get its engines on that stand? I guess the one that just recently moved to Megabay.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is whether or not Booster 10 already has it. And we don't really know the answer to that. But the stand is now in there, so I'm assuming that they are probably going to... they probably already have the ring section mounted on top of it. And I guess the only way we'll know is if we see Booster 10 move across the front of the Mega Bay and then get placed on top of this stand. We won't obviously be able to see the engines. There's not really an angle that will allow us to see the engines when they lift it. But I think it's safe to assume that Booster 10 will probably be the first booster on top of this. And if not, for sure it'll be Booster 11.
All right, exactly. Elon John asks question: what if the gantry crane, I suppose the bridge crane, lifts the ring?
Well, initially, as it's being placed onto these stands, it's probably going to be done using that bridge crane. I guess, is he asking like if it lifts it off so that it can go back on top of SPMTs with the booster on top or something?
That's kind of my guess of the context of the question. Yeah.
I can't really see a reason to do that, because then you would need to place it on top of more pedestals somewhere else. But yeah, to me, I think this is a permanent workstation inside of the Mega Bay. And so once it's fully assembled, I doubt they'll take it apart again.
And then related to that, Paul Baker says, surely you don't have enough lifting headroom to get a booster with a full complement of engines over the top of the table.
Well, they would have to.
There's a lot more room. Yeah, there's a lot more room or headroom than I think people realize in the Mega Bay, at least. High Bay, not so much.
Yeah, I think we actually have a good image that shows kind of the available headroom here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Yeah, it's quite a bit. I feel like they could even do it with the hot stage ring installed. You have a pretty decent amount of space above the top of this booster to lift it off of that stand with the engines installed.
And keep in mind that in this photo, the booster is likely on a transport stand, and we know the transport stands, they're not high enough, but they cover about, I think, maybe half the distance of an actual Raptor engine. So imagine an increase of about half of an engine above this booster, plus the headroom for the ring, and yeah, there's still plenty of room.
Agreed. Ziggy Edison asks, would it make sense that the 20-point stands are for transport and the 10-point stands are for engine install?
Well, I guess as we mentioned before, they already have 5 booster transport stands, and they're still working on one of them right now. I think that if they were going to abandon those and start using a different type of transport stand, that we would not be seeing them working on that 5th transport stand right now. So, yeah, I mean, it is a possibility, but I don't know. I just can't really see that. So, I can't really think of a good reason why they would do that.
Right. No Donut, could they develop a revolver-like Raptor installation press using the press pit?
Wait, what?
Could they develop a revolver-like Raptor installation press using the press pit?
I don't fully understand the question, I guess.
Yeah, bad context. John Dopker, what's the reason for the different colors of the tiles?
Guessing that was in relation to ship 25. Yeah, so we kind of covered that. The tiles, I guess some of them are old and some of them are new. So, that's part of it. These ones are, the older ones are like dirty. They, have dust on them, and the newer ones are a little bit cleaner. So that's probably most of the reason for it. And then obviously the ones that have been repaired have that lighter coloring on top of them. And the ones up here, we believe this is probably residue from the glue that they use, more than likely.
Yeah, the tiles naturally have a slight color variance in them, and then you've got the dust also plays a large role. You can mostly the dust and maybe even a little bit of sun fading is affecting or making those newer ones stand out a lot more.
Agreed. Another one from Igor Skorzinski. Any ideas why they still didn't scrap the SN15 aft section?
Yeah, no reason. I mean, I think it probably just comes down to time. So, they probably just haven't had time to finish it yet. So this aft section right here is this from booster 14? I think this is the one where they cut the header tank out. So it looks like they may actually have been in the process of scrapping this one as this was happening. But yeah, for this one, ship 15, no idea. I think it's just, comes down to time. So, it takes a lot longer, I guess, to scrap that aft section. So, they're just busy doing other things. And when they get to it, they'll get to it.
I just want to thank James L. for $10 super chat. Thanks for your great work on this site. And that's all I got for this section right now. We can move on.
Awesome. Well, over at the Ring Yard, we have lots of progress with the Mega Bay as well. So they've begun to install those roof sections, which you can see here. And in the ground images, they've actually gotten 3 of these corners finished. So I'll show that really quick. They also have the middle section that goes above the doorway installed as well too. So we should be able to see that from this image right here. The crane was actually in the process of installing that. As Mauricio was taking this image, you can see they're sitting there installing all of the bolts into that. But yeah, so that middle section is installed, and they will next have to put the bridge crane rail across the backside of it. But they've gotten, as I said, 3 of these corners for the roof already completed. And from what we can tell, it seems pretty obvious that they're also going to have glass windows up here, just like they do on the first Mega Bay. So I'm sure somebody's going to ask that question. But yeah, the next step, I guess, would probably be to install these roof trusses. That'll probably, once they get that 4th corner up, they'll probably start installing the roof trusses. I kind of expected them to wait to do that and instead install the bridge cranes first. But we haven't seen the trolleys for these bridge cranes show up yet, but we do have the sorry, this is not going to be the best image for it. The 4th girder section did show up this week, so I think that's probably the one in the middle right here. So now we're just waiting for those 2 trolleys to show up. But yeah, they're making really good progress on the actual inside of the Mega Bay. And I want to see another angle to see if we can see the stairs in there, because they've been installing stairs all week. So I don't think we can see the, oh, you can just barely see the top of the stairs down here. So I would say they're a little over halfway done on the stairs, and I think they lifted another set last night. So moving pretty quick on that. And yeah, making really good progress back here. So once they finish all this stuff, the final thing they're going to have to do is do the floor on the inside of here, because this is still just a dirt floor on the inside. But I think they got a while to get to that point, because once they put the roof truss sections on, then they'll start doing the floor, and then they got to do the concrete on the top of that. So and then the roof after that. So we got a ways to go on this, but once that actual floor section up here is completed with the bridge crane installed, we may possibly see them start actually using this. I don't know if there's any rush to do so, because they still have some space available inside of Mega Bay 1. But yeah, I would say within the next 2 months, we'll probably see this thing operational.
Jay Fidel asks, is Mega Bay 2 taller than Mega Bay 1?
Nope. They are the exact same height. Yeah, these are going to be identical structures. We don't know if they'll do the same thing on the outside as far as adding the additional buildings around the base, but I would expect that they may do that as long as they have enough room behind it, which it appears that they do. This is a good image kind of showing it. Decent amount of room behind it, although not enough to create a driveway, I don't think. So that'll be the question, I guess, is whether or not we'll actually see them add more space back here so they can install a driveway so they can actually drive behind the building. But that may not be necessary if they, you could back trucks in through here, then unload Raptors into the side of the building instead of through the backside. But yeah, we got a ways to go before they get to that point. I think they'll fully complete the structure before they start doing that. Let's see. So I don't know if we're going to have Jax with us or not for the ring yard, but we do finally have some great aerial shots showing of what is left of the mid bay. And they made really quick work of that. So as you can see, most of this stuff has been cut into smaller pieces, and a lot of it has already been taken away. A small pile here, and I think this stuff over here is also from the mid bay. But yeah, they scrapped this stuff. A lot of people, saw some people on Twitter, talking about kind of wastefulness, but all of this stuff is made out of steel, and steel is the most recycled material in the US. So all of this stuff will be recycled and reused again somewhere else. So yeah, it's really cool to see the progress of this. And now I guess our question is, what happens next? So one of the big things that we can see down here, which kind of ruins my thought on exactly how this is going to look. I'm going to see if I can find a better angle of it. This one does it well enough. But you can see the fence that they're building down here, and it kind of stops here, and they still have those barriers up. So the question is, if they build another Mega Bay, where's it going to go? I'm kind of expecting it to line up the edge of it with the high bay, the front of the high bay right here. So similar to how this edge lines up with the front of the mega bay. And the only reason for that is because to me, it makes more sense to push it over as far as you can so that you have space in between the front of the Star Factory and that building. The really only thing in the way of that is this parking lot right here. And they would also need to construct another entrance down here. So that's kind of something I'm on the lookout for, is this entrance to be moved to this location. And that'll kind of be if that happens, that'll be our first sign of where this new structure is going to go. But, in my opinion, I don't think they would have demolished this building if they didn't have immediate plans for it, for this location. And I don't think it's necessary to have a ring yard quite this large. But it is probably a good idea to have another bay for stacking ships, because as we mentioned a few minutes ago, you're definitely going to need more ship stacking capabilities than you do booster stacking. Let's see. So in the ring yard area, I don't have much to add here. I don't know if either of you two do. There's a lot of ring sections out here. Let's see if Jack's popped in here or not.
I will say it's impressive with how they've managed to cram these in pretty much every square inch they can while doing multiple things in parallel. And it's I'm imagining it's a little bit of a logistic nightmare, but they've kind of made the most of it and able to use about as much space as they possibly can.
Yeah, that was one thing. I did say on Twitter last week that I was expecting the mid bay to be dropped forward instead of to the side. So it kind of fell to the side in this location right here. And I personally was expecting it to fall forward, primarily just because of the way that they had laid out these barriers. But I think a good reason maybe not to do that, just to prevent any damage to the concrete over here where they're actually going to be, where the ring yard is. And I guess I'm kind of expecting this fence to be brought back a little bit so they have a little more access to the rest of the ring yard, because right now they're kind of storing things still in between this is the last one over here. They moved most of it back into the ring yard, and over on this side as well too. So I'm assuming they probably want access back to this here soon so they can move all of these back over. But yeah, it's super crammed out there. We do have another ship that has received its cargo. It's a Pez dispenser, and I don't know if this was done recently, but I haven't noticed it on previous episodes. So I'm assuming this may be for ship 32. So right now they're stacking ship 31, I believe, or is it 30? I think it's ship 30. Ship 30 is currently stacking right now, so I don't know if we can see inside of here. Let's see. Tough to see, but I think this is 31's or ship 30's nose cone. I'm getting confused here. So 29 is in the 29 and 30. Okay, so this will be 31. So
exactly.
Yeah, 31 is stacking. So that means, I guess at the time of this image, they hadn't started it yet. So this would be 31's nose cone. And then the payload section that I was looking at down there was probably 31's payload section. So yeah, now have 3 ships inside of the high bay, which is actually kind of crazy. I mean, that's a lot of, to have 2 full ships in there plus be stacking another one is pretty interesting the way they're able to do that. And, having an additional larger structure like another mega bay would allow them to essentially double what they're doing in there. So theoretically 4 ships and 2 stacking stations could be in there. Or at minimum, you'd be able to move the engine install stand from Sanchez. I can't see it from this angle, but to move the engine install stand from Sanchez into one of those buildings so that you can actually do it inside of there instead of, out in the elements. But yeah, lots of great progress at the build site. At the you could also see in that other image, the space where the two fab tents used to be. So they're still doing a bunch of removal work over here. Tent 2 seems to be fully cleared out. Most of tent 1 is gone. They still are dismantling some of these trailers back here. And once that's done, I think we'll probably see them rip all of this concrete up within the next few weeks. So that's going to be a lot of concrete that they got to remove. I imagine moving it. But yeah, they're probably going to want to get started with so this is the nose cone section of the Star Factory, at least this section of it right here. So we'll probably want to get started on that as soon as possible so that they can then get rid of tent 3. So that's the last remaining part from the original layout of Starbase. And yeah, I mean, this is pretty massive. It's kind of crazy how they've been moving along with this. As y'all can see, they've gotten the 4th section of this part of the building up. I think as of yesterday, I think they got the 5th set of columns up as well too. And they're moving along on the roof on the middle section right here, and also have started to join the 2 sections back here. So with the ground images, we can actually see. I'm going to show some ground images.
After that, Zach, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, on the roof, why different color?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I am kind of wondering if they may paint it or something like that, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, even the steel on the inside of the building is a different color. I believe they've kind of started painting that. It kind of looks like these are white in here, and then these ones are black. You can kind of see that some of them have started to, they're painted about halfway. So yeah, I think if they're painting the inside, they may also paint the top. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think this is the same material that they're using, but I don't really have a good reason for that, honestly.
Mm.
It would be really weird if the actual top of this building ends up being 2 different colors, though.
Yeah, true. Will not be as good as we thought, but yeah.
Yeah, but so as I was saying, they've nearly completed the joining of these 2 structures, and from that ground view, you can see that the wall, they've already got the wall up right here. So because they're not going to be able to expand this part out yet, they're going to have to build a wall here until they are able to remove tent 3, and then they'll be able to join this part with the last section of the Star Factory that'll be completed. But yeah, I'm assuming once they finish this, they'll put a door up here, like a sliding doorway, similar to what they have on the front side of the Star Factory. And then after that, they can probably begin to tear down this wall and join the 2 buildings together. I think the last thing that is going to come in the way of that would be installing the actual HVAC system. And on the back side of this building, where's the backside? This is super high up, but from the backside of this building, we can see that they've delivered some of the HVAC units right here. I believe that's what these are.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. They look different, but yeah, just bigger.
They're a lot larger, yeah. So, I mean, you only have, I believe, 2 sections right here where they can go. I thought there was 3 in this first section of the building. Maybe there's only 2. But yeah, so, I mean, having larger HVAC system means that you don't need all these tiny ones. So, yeah, that could be what they're doing there.
Mm.
But yeah, I would assume that within the next few weeks, we actually won't be able to see them tear that wall down. So it'll be hard to know that they've actually done it. And we also won't be able to see into that side of the building very well. So it's going to be a little difficult to tell. One of the things, I guess, that may stop them from doing that as soon as I'm saying it will, is the fact that there's not a wall along this side. And so even if you have HVAC over here, this whole building, this whole side of the building over here will still be open. So it may actually take longer to begin using this side of the building than I initially believed. But yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes out on that. They may actually have to fully complete this entire section of the building before they're able to do that. Let's see, is this a third? Can't tell if this is actually two separate HVAC spots or if this is...
Yeah, looks like that. They are the same size, so...
Yeah, this may actually just be a frame that's going to go on top, though.
That's what it looks like to me, yeah. If you look on the one up above, it kind of looks like there's a little wall there where the one down below doesn't have.
Yeah.
Similar coloring, too.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Star Factory progress is cruising right along. Really excited for all of that, and hopefully within the next few weeks we'll see them start to rip this up and get all of their electrical conduit down. The one thing that I think is an issue is the fact that the electrical system runs from this side of the building to the front. So I don't know if this side of the building will be able to be activated until this 10 is gone, because they'll have to connect the electrical work this way. So that's going to be interesting to see. I think that maybe hopefully 10.3 will probably come down within the next like 2 to 3 months, but I do believe that'll require this side of the building to be activated first. But with that, I don't really have much else to talk about on the Star Factory side. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to point out?
Not on my side. I don't know if the guys did notice something. Looks like that. So,
did we have any questions from the audience, Joe?
Yes, indeed. First, I want to thank J-Tan for 20 gifted memberships. That's a lot of support. Thanks, J-Tan. And if you guys received one of those, make sure you thank your gifter and enjoy the perks. You can join us on our weekly previews the day that Mauricio takes these awesome images. Come and pop in the Discord. Make sure you tie your YouTube to your Discord, and you can join us. But let's get to some questions. Well, I want to thank John Dopker. First off, $5 for a math question. How many megabays equal to one vehicle assembly building?
Oof. I don't know how to answer that one.
I know, right? Length times width times height.
Yeah.
All right. On the water, is it possible that Megabay be demoed and Megabay 2 be used temporarily for ship work while a third Megabay is built in high base place?
Well, I don't expect Megabay 1 to be demoed, but if anything, I would expect possibly high bay to come down at some point, but that won't happen until there's another something else to replace it. So, I do think that it just makes sense to have 4 of them, and you're just not going to want to do that before you actually have another operational bay for stacking ships. But bringing that one down is going to be very interesting because it's going to be a lot more difficult, I would say, to safely bring this down without having it land on anything. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
So here's a question, Zach. Do you think if they build another quote-unquote wide bay for primarily ship construction, do you think it would be as tall as the other ones used for the boosters, or do you think they would make it a little bit shorter since they have all that, unused space at the top?
That's a good question. I mean, there may not be as much of a need for it to be taller. I mean, they will at some point stretch the ships a little bit, especially for the tanker variant, but I don't think they're anywhere near being maxed out on space inside of the high bay as far as height goes. So yeah, I'm not sure. The engine install stand at Sanchez is much taller than the transport stands are here. So that will add some additional height to ships once they're sitting on top of that. Matter of fact, we can kind of see that from the ground. Let's see. Yeah, this kind of shows it right here. The perspective is a little off, but you can see that, you have a lot of additional height once it's sitting on top of those stands. So that's one thing to account for. And then, excuse me, once you stretch the ships as well too, you might want the additional headroom. I don't think it's super necessary, but I mean, they already have, the design for mega bays. So they might as well just continue to build those. But, it is possible that they shorten it a little bit because it may not be fully necessary. It's kind of like wasted headroom. But yeah, tough to say. What do you guys think? No thoughts?
Well, that's why I asked the question. I think, yeah, the idea of them having, the design plans for the Mega Bay already, it would be easier to, create another one of those. They've done all the calculations, everything, all the regulatory approval and stuff like that. So it would probably be easier for them to just do that. Plus, it gives them the flexibility in the future that, if for some reason they need to store a booster somewhere and there's happens to be room in the ship bay, then maybe they just roll one in there. Whether it be weather or something else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one thing also that I'm expecting to see, hopefully, which I've kind of mentioned before, is just the possibility of having an additional or expanding the rocket garden over to this area behind the or next to the Mega Bay 2, which people have asked at the beginning of the show if there will be an expansion of the rocket garden. I think that's the most likely place that we'll see that happen.
Right now they have like 5 boosters not ready for flight, but fully stacked. So
well, we can't count booster 4.
Yeah, true. So booster 9, 10, 11, and 12. And 13 is like roughly there. Not fully stacked, but And ships, they have 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, and started to build 31. So I don't think they are going to have a problem with storage right now, because if they are building right now with high bay ships and Mega Bay 1 boosters, imagine doubling Mega Bay. So with Mega Bay 2, I don't think they're going to have a problem right now. And I don't think they are going to be a rush to demolish high bay 1, like high bay. So yeah, at least for maybe a year, they are fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, seeing high bay 1 demolished is kind of just what I'm hoping for, but may not be fully necessary. Cool.
Due to time constraints, I'm not going to be taking any more questions on this. I think we've pretty well covered everything. Wanted to thank Pete 2.0 for a super sticker, $1.99 Australian. Thanks for your support. Cinti did want to make sure that we showed the ground photos on Booster 13 Common with the new vents.
Okay, so let's see here. I have some ground images. Booster 13 Common Dome. Let's see. I actually haven't seen that yet. Let's see. Where is it? This is not a common dome. I don't see the common dome section in these images. Let's see. Could it be in this one?
It's actually there, but we don't have a photo of it.
That's right. We were showing it on last night's show and tell, but that was from Rover 1, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we don't have a photo of it from Mauricio's set.
Okay. Very well. We can move on.
Cool. Yeah, and I did have an image up a minute ago showing ship 30 1 and the bottom of the high bay. So you can see that it's been stacked on top of its payload section. Probably expecting this thing to go pretty quickly because, it takes them less than a month to stack ships. So we'll probably see that fully stacked by the end of September. All right. So I will move us on down to the village area. Oops, that was the wrong one. Wait, was I even showing the ground pictures just now?
Yeah, you were.
Okay. Been really bad about that lately. So let's see. They have they completed this building. We haven't seen them actually start to move. And they also finished the roofing on this tent over here, which we also don't know the purpose of that one. But over in this area, they've still not really done much with the area that they where they took down the tracking station. But you can see that the Pez dispenser loader is now moved into here. And as I mentioned, they still have I think this is the 5th transport stand, which is, this may actually be the 4th one because I think there's another one still under construction as well too. I get confused. But yeah, so they've still been working on this, which is kind of why we don't really see there being a reason to construct any new type of transport stand. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of just my opinion on that one. So let's see what else we have down here. Not really much. By the integration building over here, they've started to do some sort of groundwork clearing this area over here. So we don't really know what's going to happen there. I don't know if SpaceX, so there are additional properties back here, and we don't know if SpaceX owns those yet. But it will be interesting to see if they start expanding out in this area too. Not really sure what they would do back there, but there's always a surprise waiting for us. Inside of this building, they have been working on what we believe is like a giant stretch form machine / possibly parts for a press pit, for the press pit machinery. And let me go ahead and try and grab that image. Looking for it in these ground images. I may be going the wrong direction here. Let's see. Searching. There's a ton of ground images. I think there's about 200 of them this week. So if you guys are members on YouTube or Patreon, then you should have access to all the ground images. And we're getting close.
Yeah, they are 260.
Oh yeah, 260 ground images and 200 aerials. I am having trouble finding. Here we go. Oh, you know what? This is kind of random, but I want to show this one because this answers a lot of questions that some people have had about future rocket gardens. So this is a sign that's out, I believe, near the Sanchez site, right, Mauricio? You still with us?
That's right by the rocket garden.
Okay.
By the fence.
Yeah. So this is something, if you ever have been down to Starbase when a booster is at the launch site, but not on the launch mount, if there's high winds, they will shut down the highway and evacuate people from Highway 4. And the reason for that is because of the possibility of a booster falling over. And so you can kind of see that they have outlined what they consider to be a hazard area for the possibility of boosters or ships falling over. So it's a pretty massive area. So in high wind, I'm assuming that they don't let people within these hazard areas. So if you ever see the road closed up here, then a good reason for that is probably due to the high wind. Boosters are pretty tall. So in the event that one of these were to fall down, then you'd have a problem. I wonder if they used, whose image is this? Is this a satellite shot, or is this one of Mauricio's images?
I was going to point that out.
It's a satellite image. It's apparently Google Images. Darn it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because from this angle, okay, they put circles over each of these instead of, I thought this was yeah. So that's interesting. But yeah, you can see that's a pretty large area that they consider to be hazardous for the possibility of boosters tipping over. But yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to show. But here inside of that integration building, tough to see, but there's a lot of machinery in there that they're still assembling. And this stuff will likely be transported into the Star Factory. So this will be in the heavy metals building, which is the corner that I'm not able to see here. Actually, I'll show it from this side. So this section of the building is the heavy metals building. So most of that heavy equipment will go inside of this building, both in the press pit and possibly surrounding it. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty interesting building that I would love to see the inside of one day. But yeah, we can't really see much other than just the kind of front of it. But I did want to point that out. Beyond that, sorry about that. Don't think there's really much to talk about in the rest of the village, and we may move site. They're still working on the HLS prototype. Obviously, we're not able to really see what they're doing there, but it's there. And in the backside of the village, haven't made any progress with this area, and we also have not seen any indications of the tracking station being moved to another location. So, yeah. With that,
sad moment.
The tracking station. I like the tracking station, but I wonder how necessary it is to even have it. You know what I mean? Like I think if it was like a big deal, they'd probably get it back pretty quickly. I do wonder what has changed with like their comms situation to allow them to not need this, because during all the launch site testing, they used to point these at the ships and boosters. So I wonder if there's part of the underground work that they did here. They did lay down some comms lines. So I wonder if it's possible that these aren't necessary anymore because of the groundwork that they did, installing additional communications lines. But we'll know soon if they ever bring this back. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the suborbital tank farm, which in my opinion is the fun part for today. So this is kind of a continuation of the speculation from the beginning of the episode. So right now they are in the process of starting to do groundwork over here. And when we look at it from another angle, you can kind of see, and this isn't the best angle. Let me kind of want to look at it straight on. This is a good one. So you can see the way that this wall comes in right here and kind of curves back outwards like this. And when we look at it from the ground view, you can see that they've actually, the walls that they're installing there are very tall. So let me pull that up really quick. And so many images to scroll through. Here we go. So this is some of the formwork that they've been laying down. We kind of see over here, they're actually got the actual formwork up, but they're putting down the rebar cages for this wall. And as you can tell, it's pretty tall. And when you look at it from this side, it kind of makes sense why they're doing this. So this driveway right here, which typically up to this point has only been for tanker trucks to roll by. You know, if you wanted to make this road wider so that you can actually potentially bring a booster back here, you're going to have to build up this ground in order to be the same level as this back here. And so I think that is the reason why this wall is as tall as it is, because they're going to want to backfill this with additional dirt. I mean, it could be as simple as just wanting to keep people out, but I think that if you were trying to build this area up back here, you wouldn't be able to do it without a retaining wall, because it would be difficult to build something that wasn't susceptible to erosion without having some sort of retaining wall. And you don't want wetlands area because they're not able to do that yet. So I think that's what's going on here. It kind of looks just perfect width for a booster to fit through here. You know, if you have the road going from here basically to there, You can see a booster transport stand for size comparison should be able to fit through there. And with the way that they're widening it down here at the bottom, I'm almost expecting that they'll create a way, a driveway to actually turn in with SPMTs possibly. That is a rather steep ramp though, but I don't see that being a huge issue because the SPMTs can adjust their the height of the wheels so that they're able to like reduce that slope a little bit if they're traveling up it. But that's also what the counterweights are for, to stop it from tipping. So I don't think that'll be too big of an issue, but that's kind of what it looks like to me here, that we're going to see a longer driveway here. The one thing, and I said before, I do try to poke holes in my own theories. The one thing I believe that would stop them from testing boosters back in this area would be the size of this tank farm. So they're going to need additional storage tanks if they're going to test boosters back here. Because this is just enough to, can they fully fill a ship with this? We never saw them. I don't think we ever saw them fully top off a ship back here.
With LOX and nitrogen is possible, I think.
Yeah, I believe they've done full,
Yeah, they have. Yeah, so in some of the cryo tests, fully fill them up. So this is enough to fully fill a ship, but not for a booster. So I would imagine at minimum, you'd probably want at least one additional of each tank. So there is currently, theoretically, you could move this over a little bit and you could fit another tank in here. And they should also be able to fit another tank right back in this area. But the question is, why build back here? Like what is going on back here? So, that's why, in my opinion, I think if there is a static fire test stand, this is a likely location for it. So we know that from in the past that SpaceX had planned for there to be another booster stand back here. So this is a map, I believe, from the initial PEA. And so I think things may be a little different now, but what you can see is that this one right here is for a booster / Starship structural test stand. And so this is, sorry, trying to zoom out just a little bit without going all the way out. See if I can do that. Okay, there we go. And this zoom is super sensitive. So you have test stand A here, B right there, and then right here is where C is supposed to be. So there is the problem right now that if you wanted to put a test stand right there, you have to be able to build in this area right here, which is right now considered part of the low-lying lands, which is, I guess, they would need Army Corps of Engineer approval in order to extend this all the way over. But, if you're going to have a flame trench somewhere, I think in this area, while it is sketchy because of how close it is to this tank farm, as long as you're directing the flames away, I think it's possible to do that. And so, I don't know, I can't really think of any other reasons why you would build this area up unless you were going to put something here. And I do expect that we're going to see a rework of the actual tank farm to some degree. I'm not sure what that will look like. But yeah, it seems to me like they're in the process of that. They do have one additional tank down here. I think this is probably just a vertical nitrogen storage tank or something like that. But yeah, they have started to bring some equipment in here. But we're going to have to wait and see what they end up doing back here. But to me, I think that's the most likely outcome is, building this area up and possibly putting a test stand with a flame trench here. And so again, you need the room for the boosters to come in there. Can't really fit them around here. So it seems to me that that's what they're doing back here. I think the crane can get back in that area, but boosters cannot. And, a lot of people were suggesting that it would almost make more sense to get rid of one of the suborbital test stands, but as far as we can tell, they don't appear to be doing that. So we know that they've recently done a retrofit of Test Stand A, which is not yet complete, I don't think. They still have some work to do on that. But they've also started doing even more work on Test Stand B. So as of the last week, they added on this additional platform back here. And you can see a bunch of pipe manifolds on top of here. And yeah, they're doing something to Test Stand B. We don't really know what this is yet, though. It's going to be really tough to tell without having like super close-up images of this. Let me see if I can show it at least from a different perspective. No, this is actually the best angle to see it from. But yeah, this is one of the big updates, I guess, from this week, is that they're still yet again making modifications to Test Stand B. They did add like a ultra purge system on here before, and since we know that they've added additional vents on the front of the ship, this could possibly be related to that. So whether it's, supplying the CO2 or nitrogen for that purge system, or if it's possibly even for collecting it. So with the Raptor Chill collection, they do have these hoses down here that connect to a little pipe down at the bottom that collect the Raptor Chill venting. So theoretically, it could be possible that they may collect the venting from that from the engine skirt, but I think that's less likely. But whatever it is, they're doing something to change the way that they're going to be doing testing on ships. So that'll be something interesting to watch out for next time, is just any difference in the testing procedure. And as of right now, I have no clue what that's going to look like. You guys have any thoughts?
Well, I would say, given that they've been kind of messing around with these stands for a bit, for a while it seemed like Test Stand B was kind of their test bed for what they were going to do possibly with Test Stand A. And given that they have done some modifications to A, I think we can probably say that that stand is safe, at least for now. But given they've done work to both of those stands, I think it is pretty evident that they plan to continue using them for, at the very least, probably static fires or spin primes, which is why if they do indeed decide to build a booster static fire test stand, it's almost more likely that they at least do one of those at Massey's, and maybe the third one, or I guess technically the second booster stand, would be here, kind of adjacent to the suborbital. But yeah, they're going to have to do some reconfiguring of some of the tank farm in order to allow for that to actually happen. I guess one other consideration would be they may need one other tank to actually fill a booster, but if they plan to do testing at an increased cadence with ships and boosters, they're probably going to need a little bit more overhead. That way they can actually do multiple vehicles without having to refill. So they may need a couple more tanks, which kind of complicates things. But as they make changes here, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes out and see what kind of goes on.
Yeah, it's always interesting because you'd think that this test stand is done, but clearly not. And the other thing about this is whatever they're adding here, you would think theoretically it also needs to be added onto the integration tower. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye out for. Like, this could be something that's for future generations of ships that they're preparing for. And obviously, since they're not retesting 25 here, that kind of further leads me to believe that. But seeing that they've added this on here, I'm kind of expecting there to be some additional modifications to the GSE arm on the integration tower once IFT2 is completed. But yeah, that's most of what's going on over here at the. I think we can move over to the orbital tank farm, where there's finally been a ton of work over there. It's more like just getting set up for what's to come. But yeah, they have. Well, let's start from left to right, or right to left. Not much progress with the area where they're going to install the new storage tanks, but they are complete and just sitting around waiting for those tanks to show up. So as far as we know, there is one tank sitting at the port in Port Isabel, but we haven't seen any additional show up, and they're probably are going to arrive by barge. So it'll be tough to predict when they're going to arrive, but not really expecting to see them until after this next launch. And then immediately after that, we'll probably see a ton of work happening over in this area. Although they will probably jump into static fire testing of Booster 10 pretty quickly, but they're definitely going to want to find the time to actually finish their modifications of the tank farm. And the biggest modification that we've seen this week has to do with maxing out the actual tank farm. So they have installed 2 cataboilers on the methane side. And as this image was being taken, they were lifting in the 4th methane pump. So this is interesting. I think that, they already had 3 pumps down here, but they're using 2 cataboilers. So this seems to be 1-to-1. You need 1 cataboiler for each methane pump. And so I kind of wonder if they were running these at 75% or something like that in order to get away with not needing the additional cataboilers at first. So, even though they did have 3 installed, I don't think they were running at their max capability there. But with this 4th pump installed, they'll probably drastically speed up the rate that they're loading methane, which in my opinion has been super slow. They're every time they test the boosters, I'm like, why isn't there frost in the methane tank yet? It takes 10 to 15 minutes for the frost line to finally start showing up on the booster. So this is going to be really exciting for the 3rd launch. I imagine they will have all of this set up by then. And one thing that I didn't point out earlier, near the village, let me see if I can find it from the aerial view. Okay, there we go. So they also have at least some of the pipework, that the manifolds that go on top of those cataboilers. So I think these ones obviously go on top, and these ones go below. There's one more right here. So these all essentially showed up on the same day. I take that back. So these pipes showed up on the same day as the cataboilers for the liquid oxygen side of the tank farm. So if we look at that side, you can see that they now have 1, 2, 3, 4 additional cataboilers back there. And so these 4 plus those manifolds all showed up at the same day. And to me, that means that these were taken from pad 39A. So, if given the fact that pad 39A is not active right now, they really don't have a need for these over there. So instead of buying new ones, you might as well just ship them over for there instead of paying for the new ones up front. It's much cheaper to just use what you already have. So yeah, we can see that they've got those installed, but it's going to be a lot of work to actually set up the rest of it. So for one, they'll have to chop into this this pipe up here in order to install the in-feeding pipe into these 2 cataboilers. And then they'll also have to chop into the one down there, which is kind of hard to see. But they've been ready to do that for a while. That's why they never finished covering this with it's kind of like a stainless steel wrapping that they put on top of it. What's going to be a little bit more difficult is the ones on the backside. So let me see if I can get a better angle of this. So this is going to be a little bit weird because they may have to run a completely different line, or this pipe right here will have to curve around the back and go over the top of these ones. And same thing with the bottom one down here, except I think they'll just have to tap into it from right here. They'll put a T into it because it goes underneath this what do you want to call it, trench. And then, yeah, they'll have to tap into there. So that's going to be a lot than the work on the methane side, which is, I think, part of the reason why they don't want to do it now, because that's a lot of work. I think the methane side can be done rather quickly. All you have to do over here is just extend this. And well, I guess you do have to tap into the one on the bottom down here. So that's a little bit more difficult. But they do already have the liquid nitrogen lines ran down here, and at least one of them already has a T coming off it. They need to add one more. So the methane side will happen pretty quickly, but the liquid oxygen side is going to be a bit more of a process. But that's really good news to see this in here. I mean, you're doubling your cooling capability, and they still have one more pump to add in here, which we have seen delivered to the site, but then it was taken away again. So I'm guessing it'll probably come back sometime next week, but they're just basically getting set up for what's to come. So after this next flight test, we'll probably see them immediately start taking this apart and retrofitting it to accommodate these extra pumps and the kettle boilers. So yeah, glad when a prediction comes true. We were hoping that, as they expanded their utilities as far as like their electrical supply to the site, that they would also then be able to expand the amount of pumps they have, because these things use a ton of power. I think it's like 1.5 megawatts or something like that per pump. So it's quite a bit. And yeah, that's going to be really awesome. They'll probably bring the fill time down to 45 minutes. So I think when they fully fill both the ship and booster, it takes about 90 minutes. So it's going to be way faster once they actually get this activated. Let's see. So before we talk about the launch mount, there's just one. I guess in the last week, they also increased their HVAC for this actual building. So this is like where all of their comms and controls for both the integration tower, tank farm, and the launch mount are in here. So a lot of computer power in there, and they've been consistently upgrading the amount of HVAC they have there. So I'm guessing that room is just like getting really hot. So yeah, just one interesting thing I wanted to point out there. They're also added one to the front. So I'm guessing this still isn't enough because they're blowing cool air in from the front as well too. It's also just been super hot this summer in general. So I think that's part of what's going on there. So yeah, let's move over to the launch mount. All right. Well, what is something you guys wanted to point out from this week? I know they did some Fondag work.
So the OLM was really getting prepared for another launch. You can see that there is the booster pins are no more. So
the stabilization pins, they removed those.
Yeah. So that pointed out some good things about launch very soon. And also you can see on the top of the tower, I don't know if you have the ground picture ready for that.
Yeah.
You can see that they have installed 4 new cameras up there.
Yeah, grab that picture really quick.
Oh yeah. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you got all of them looking at different angles. This one's like right at the bottom of the tower. This one's kind of like towards the center of the launch mount, or maybe even these could be looking at the 2 QDs. I think this one could be looking at the booster QD, and this one's looking at the ship QD. Maybe.
Yeah. Yes. They have one that we saw on the last static fire. They have one just down of the top part, like a little bit down. One of those, or even more like down. There's another camera that points to the static fire that we saw.
Is it below this area?
I think yes.
Are you sure it's
But
not the
I
ones
could be
right
wrong.
there? The 3 that are sitting right there, the one is pointing straight down?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering right now.
These
I don't
almost look like
remember.
more like security cameras, though.
Yeah, that's one. That's what I think. But maybe I think there was a picture. Let me check
Let's
out that.
This isn't going to get us high enough. Oops. No, you won't be able to see it from this side either.
No.
But you can see that the
I
stairs are
see.
coming up.
Oh yeah, that is a good thing to point out.
Yeah.
We've got the stairs going about almost up to the QD height.
Yep.
Yeah, 4 levels of the tower down.
And I believe there's a photo of a case of stairs on a truck coming in, and there was a thought that that staircase in particular, or that set, was for the top because it was different at the top of the staircase.
Let's see.
I think it's in the 260 ground images.
Well, they do have a few more sets here. So there's 5 here, and then I know there's still at the Sanchez site. I have a feeling that it's not going to go all the way to the top of the tower now.
I don't think it's going to the top either. I think they're only going to the middle. That's all they really have to get to anyways.
Yeah, but if you ever have elevator issues again, then you may want to be able to access the top of the tower. But again, actually climbing all of those stairs all the way to the top of the tower would be insane. But yeah, I guess in this image you could actually see they were in the process of installing those cameras. So I guess that was done on Wednesday-ish. But yeah, that's going to be really cool. I wonder if we're going to get like additional views during the next launch attempt. That'll be really cool. What's this one over here?
That's another one of those like a PTZ rig. It's like that. What was the rig called that that Tim Dodd almost lost in the static fire in the launch? Sorry, that the stabilizing leg arm thingy. I don't know what it's called, but that's what that is. It's very fancy. It's a lot of money.
Those are remote controlled, I guess, platforms that you can move around, like Indian Star was saying, PTZ. But what I'm surprised is that those cameras are not enclosed. Maybe they were in the process, but typically, if you look at the ones at the right, those are, I guess, blast proof per se, to some sense, to protect it from the plume. Now, the ones on the left, those are just the raw cameras, like the way they come. So I'm not sure.
Is this the lens right here in the middle?
Well, you look, if you zoom in, you can see the actual camera and the lens. You can see the little LCD screen on the side on one of them. And so, yeah, those things could take a beating, maybe.
Yeah, they're Blackmagic 8K cameras, 8 and 12K or 12K cameras, and I don't know that they could take a beating. They are very expensive.
Well, they're going to take a beating. They're going to take a beating on.
So you're saying we're going to test to see? I got you.
That white box may be the beginnings of like a cover of sorts to put on top. They might slide them down once they're done working on the cameras.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That at this process, the worker was installing the cameras then, but we didn't get to see if they enclosed them or not. I'll probably find out in a few days when I go out there again.
Moog mount. Thank you. I couldn't remember the word, and thank you, Rohan. So Moog mount is what they're sitting on. That was the same thing that Tim Dodd almost lost in that launch. And Dave's pretty sure that they're going to cover that, which makes sense that they're going to cover those cameras because they are very delicate, beautiful instruments.
Yeah, it looks like that. And that could be a tracking camera for the liftoff, like tracking the entire rocket going up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was almost hoping one of these was pointed upwards so you could see as the booster's passing by, looking up into the exhaust plume. That would be kind of cool.
But wouldn't those also be tracking cameras?
Camera back here would be nice. What was that?
Wouldn't those white ones with the extra insulation, wouldn't those also be tracking cameras? Because they do move.
These ones?
Yeah, true.
No. The other ones on the top of the other side on the white with the white insulation. Those ones next to the IMAX one.
Oh, yeah. They do
see
have,
that
they can rotate.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So they can go up and down. They can follow it. And then you see how far the one on the right goes all the way down. So they probably all have a certain circumference that they can go up. And then they take over from where the other one leaves off.
those won't be moving while the rocket. You can see that it's bolted. They just have it's a flange with a bunch of holes in it, and they put a bolt through it to lock it in position so the vibrations don't move it around. So they can move the one axis a certain amount with that like kind of arc, and then the other axis they can kind of twist it to the side. So those ones are locked in place. Those ones will not move.
All of them? I know that the
Yeah.
IMAX one is locked. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at all the little holes, you can see actually the middle camera next to the IMAX. Actually, over to the right. Yeah, you can see the bolts right there that are holding it together. Yeah, those don't.
There's
Those will
one
not.
going through
I
right here
see that.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Darn it, Ryan.
Well-
I'm just kidding. But then the ones below
Either
me
way,
are
that's
tracking.
really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
The ones below are also fixed.
Are they also fixed? Okay.
And Zach, the camera that I told you before is on the left, on the very left of the tower. More there. I
This
think that's the one that recorded the static fire because of how it's like on the right. Because if you take the chopsticks as a reference, you can see that it's to the right of the tower. So that's the only cam that's pointing down there, and it was there on the static fire. So maybe that's the one.
Yeah, a couple of the images that SpaceX posted on their Twitter, there's a couple different angles, and there's a couple different angles of the video. So they're using multiple cameras. It just kind of depends on which image you're talking about or which video. It might be a different camera.
I mean the one that's pointing out down from the tower where you can see the flames and everything. Like on all the ones you can see the flames, but the one that they switched to before shutdown on the live stream.
That makes sense. Yeah, really excited for that next launch. We're going to get some good imagery, I think. Let's see. There is some more stuff from the aerial view that I wanted to show. So they have done a little bit more work with the Fondag yet again. So as y'all can see here, they had to cut out a few little sections of the Fondag right here. It's really interesting the way they've done this because it almost looks like a frame, like they're going to put a steel piece on top of it, but I feel like they may just refill it back in with Fondag. Kind of interesting the way they've cut this though. And then on the other side of the launch mount, they were in the process of cutting more concrete right here. So not really sure what that's about. And that's really far out from where the actual, I don't even think the flame reached this far. So that's interesting what's going on here, but just additional areas where they're actually cutting out concrete. I think that had they waited for that first static fire test just a few weeks longer, this may not have happened.
I agree.
Yeah, but the good news is that the steel plate is surviving, so that's all that really matters. If you have to replace this stuff, that's not as big of a deal. I do wonder, I'm not sure if the rebar is still down there or not. It's really tough to tell from this angle. But yeah, that would be my only concern with having to rip this up is actually destroying the rebar in the process and not necessarily being able to tie it back into the rest of it. So it's just like a floating patch, essentially. Not a floating patch, but a patch that isn't tied into the rest of it.
But even if they took off the top layer of rebar, the rebar goes down deep, so they could just dig up a little bit more, couldn't they? And then have it attach that way?
Well, they'd be digging down into the concrete layer underneath, so
all the way into it. There wouldn't be enough, because I know that there's that whole layer of dirt that the rebar comes through after the concrete, right?
I don't think there's any dirt in between the concrete and the.
So then, what's the
Fondag.
dirt-looking stuff in the square now?
I think that just could be leftovers from when they were breaking this out.
Oh,
They just haven't cleaned it out yet.
interesting. Okay, if you say so.
So let's see. One additional thing, we got they're pumping out water from inside of here. So they did have, I believe they had the cap on last time when they did the static fire test, but apparently it's not enough to keep the water from out of there. So they're actually pumping it out from that area. This is a new steel cover. I think it's bigger than what they had there before, so I'm guessing this will ideally keep water out next time. But yeah, I don't think it's a huge deal. What was that? Oh yeah, this is the original one, I think. Yeah. So they've got a new frame in here as well too. That goes across it. So originally it was just a plate that sat on top of it. So I'm guessing that this new frame, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to put some sort of. What was that?
Might bolt to that possibly. They lower that down. Maybe those beams are connected into the concrete base, and then the steel plate is just removable with some studs that kind of poke up through those metal beams there.
Yeah.
Those leg things would be the sliders, right? To move the plate off of and on to that area again. See the ropes with the little slider legs? You can see the one on the left, just above. Just above, friend. Above the hose of the orange thing on the left corner.
It looks like a pallet jack right there off to the left.
Yeah, that one.
Oh yeah, I think Ryan's right. There's just a pallet jack.
But that wouldn't be to slide the cover, that big monstrous metal cover on top?
Oh no, definitely not. Gonna need a crane for that, or at least a forklift or something. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty heavy piece of metal right there.
Something that has kind of stuck out to me, if you kind of go over to the stairs, Zach, or the stairs on the OLM, they were pretty quick to cover the new stairs all the way up to the closed walkway. But the stairs on the left, the original ones, they haven't really touched those even since before the first flight. So I'm kind of curious if there's maybe some redesign that could possibly go on over there, or if it's maybe just a super low priority item. I believe the steel to actually cover the remaining part of that stairwell is actually located in Sanchez, and it has been there for quite a while.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that they were pretty rushed to get that other one closed up, but this one they haven't really touched.
Yeah, that's been bothering me as well too. I'm like, there's just one last thing to finish on this, but they haven't done it yet.
So I think that's need to be because of the stairs that go up, like to the dance floor when it's there.
Right. Here, I'll show that really quick. Let's see. This is a good one. Well, they did paint the stairs finally.
Yeah,
they were super rusted.
They painted the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, most of it. They haven't done the actual stairs. They've done the exterior part of it.
I meant the legs and the OLM itself.
Yeah. I mean, you would think that one panel could go here, and then you just have to leave an opening to get onto these stairs. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised they haven't actually replaced all of this yet, or placed the shielding on this yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is coming along really well though. We're I would say we're getting really close to being ready for the next launch. I mean, dang, that shield looks massive.
It is so cool, yeah.
It's a transformer.
I mean, it looks like it, yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It's crazy going back and looking at images of the launch mount when it was first assembled. It looked very tall and kind of skinny, and it's kind of gotten a lot wider in terms of its visual footprint than it was before. It looks much shorter than originally when they just had the scaffolding around the outer ring.
Yeah, when I go back and look at those images, it's almost hard to believe. I guess the part that's hard to believe is that they were ever planning on launching Booster 4 with the launch mount in that condition. Yeah. This is really nice the way it's turned out. Let's see, there's a few more things. So obviously they are still working on this tank over here. I'm surprised they haven't finished it up yet, but they're still working on the bottom of it where the actual flange is. So we're waiting for that crane to move back over here and actually shift this back into its final position. And they have the pipes over here waiting to be installed on there as well. So I don't know. I'm assuming this will definitely be done before the integrated flight test, because I imagine they definitely want to have this functional for the additional water storage capacity. But yeah, they're moving along on that. But one of the other things that we also should point out that Mauricio kind of got some images of over the last week is that they've kind of started removing a lot of this debris that's around the pad. So let me bring in that tweet from Mauricio. Let's see here. Oh, where is it? Okay, here we go. So, oops.
Oh, there we go.
That's not what I wanted. There we go.
Mhm.
So yeah, Mauricio got some good images of them actually out there surveying the area and removing some of this debris from down there. They were out there using rakes. I'm not sure if they were like trying to scrape metal out of there, like rebar, because there's a lot of rebar out there. You can kind of see some of it sticking out of this steel or that concrete block right there. And a huge, some baskets of rebar, which have clearly been removed from that area. That's really good to see. And from that ground view, it kind of looks like it's cleaner than last week. It's tough to tell. There's still a good amount of debris out there. But yeah, that's not exactly a quick process. Some of this stuff is like really heavy to actually lift out of here, some of these larger pieces. But I think especially this rebar is what they want to get rid of, and all of the smaller debris that they can. One of the big reasons, especially anything that's near the pad, because the flames, the exhaust plume will essentially curl over the edge of this pad, and it touches the ground and actually pushes everything from the ground outwards. So keeping the edge of the pad clear is a good idea because all of this debris will get thrown out during the next launch attempt. So yeah, good progress on that, and really glad that they've started to do that, and glad Mauricio's out there to get some shots of it as they started doing it.
Yeah, that maybe tells us that the FAA is mostly done with the evidence from the IFT-1. So this could be a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible that they had to wait to get down there to remove any of that stuff as a result of that investigation. So yeah, I mean, that's a good theory. You know, I initially thought that maybe it had something to do with just being busy doing other things, and now they finally have time to get to it. But I think that is a little bit more of a logical answer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. One final thing I want to touch on before we finish up for today. So yet again, they've brought even more high pressure gas tanks in here. So it looks like they're expanding that capacity even more. I've lost count of how many we have down here now, but I think these 4 will go in the middle area right here. So yeah, expanding that out even more, and they're adding additional concrete as well too. So I think they're probably going to continue all the way over here. They've started to grade that area out. But yeah, final touches are all coming into place. And I mean, if you compared this, to what it looked like before the last launch, I would say, it looks 1,000% better. Like, really like the way all of this has turned out. And it's crazy that it's only been, what are we at? Nearly 5 months now.
4 months and 10 days or so.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So before we wrap it up, Astro Joe, did we have any final questions and donations from the audience?
Indeed, I do, my friend. I want to thank a lot of generous supporters. First off, PayPal from Craneman, $52 for either the next flight or a new camera. Go RGV team. A $10 donation from PayPal from Gurki Gabor. No message, but thank you very much for that. I've got several super chats, starting off with Donald Durlin for $10. RGV Rocks, love the show. Rocket Profit, thank you, sir. RGV Aerial Photography and Team Space Rock, another awesome show. Robert Burkett, $10, love the show. Thanks for all your hard work. Jim Cabot, $10, love the bonus chat. The overtime, I guess. Thanks. A super sticker from Pete 2.0, $2 Australian dollars. Pal 9,000, 59.99 euros. Thank you, RGV team. Thank you, Pal 9,000. That's very generous. We appreciate your support. That's what I got for all of our generous support now. And, thanks for your monetary donations. You can also help us out by clicking that like button before we go. But I do have a couple of questions for us here. Let me sort through.
Joe, while you're sorting through, there's one more donation that came through from John Dopker for $5. And he says, last of my rocket funds for the week. Here's to Sunny Snacks.
Thanks for picking up on that, Indy. I got it. Got you. Thank you. Gene asks, regarding the intriguing Massey's static fire stand speculation, why not work with the Army Engineers, Corps of Engineers, to move forward with the second launch mount at the launch site?
Well, I mean, that's one thing we don't know as far as like where their progress is on that. So for all we know, they could be already working on satisfying the requirements that they needed to for that. But we won't really find out until they actually release that. So, I imagine that sometime after the Star Factory is completed, there will become a need to do that. But it's going to take about a full year, maybe a year and a half to construct that next launch site, because it's going to be a massive amount of groundwork that's required before they can start doing that. I mean, you got to fill in a lot of this area down here, so a ton of dirt, and they won't just put dirt to grade. They're going to probably build a large mound of it in order to kind of pack everything down. They may even have to remove some of this that's down here already, because it's not really the kind of foundation you want on the building. So yeah, I mean, that is a long-term solution, but I still think in the end you may possibly want different areas to perform static fire tests. So yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say on that one.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cosmic asks, wouldn't there be a barrier around the new tank farm if it's going to be methane?
Well, we're not expecting this to be methane, so they already have methane storage down here. So more than likely, the rest of this will be liquid nitrogen and liquid oxygen.
Makes sense. John Dopker, is the backside of the stairs going to be covered or left open?
I'm guessing he's talking about the ones on the launch mount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting to see that. I guess for now it'll remain uncovered, but maybe after the next launch.
Yeah, they're facing outward. I don't see why not. Craneman asks, why did they remove all the T-vents at the deluge system?
So they removed the vents from here. Well, they're still there. They're here now. They did take them off initially, but they're reinstalled here. I think they installed new valves up here, I think was what they did. I'd have to go back and check. But I think those are the vents he's talking about.
Right. Okay.
They did remove the burst discs though. So they have taken those off. But I think they will end up replacing those.
Okay, cool. Fly by night, do you guys think the deluge farm upgrades need to be completed before integrated flight test 2 for higher pressure and more water to support the full duration 100% thrust from ignition through liftoff.
What do you guys think?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Absolutely. Do you guys think the deluge farm, the water farm, upgrades need to be completed before IFT2 for higher pressure and more water to support full duration 100% thrust from ignition through liftoff?
So, right now I'm not seeing them rushing that. And I don't know if you do know this, Zach, but they need to move that third tank on place, or they just adjusted it to be like that.
They have it sitting in that position because they can't install the flange to attach to this pipe while it's sitting on top of the flange. So it has to be shifted over so they could get underneath it to do that work. And then once they finish it, they'll shift it back on top of the pipe.
Yeah. So it could be not. I'm not seeing them on a rush of that because everything was looking good, and even you can see that on the static fires, the water deluge was flowing for like 2 minutes or so. So for now, I think there's no rush on that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think they, in a perfect world, I think what they used for the static fires would probably be enough. But they probably want to have a little bit of headroom in case there's potentially a couple engine outs and it takes a little bit longer to get out of its or get enough altitude to reduce the peak heating. I imagine that the water is going to stay fairly powerful until the booster gets high enough off the ground that the plume isn't going to be, throwing as much heat down as if it were, sitting, just the 16 or 17 meters above the ground. So they probably want to have a little bit of headroom just in case those things occur. Obviously, it's not going to be an easy system to repair if they do cause any sort of damage to it. So erring on a little bit side of caution for this would probably be better. Will they have it done for the first launch? It's possible. Seems like they might truck in any remaining prefabricated parts in an afternoon and kind of get everything buttoned up. But we'll have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Agreed. Alex asks, do you guys think the hot staging ring is a part of a needed flight abort system? I think it's purely about thrust and never stop thrusting. Probably not related to a flight abort system, as Starship basically it would be the flight abort system from the booster, but that's my thoughts.
I think it's likely they looked at a couple of Venn diagrams of kind of risk mitigation and required features, and as well as some design optimizations for payload to orbit. And hot staging seemed to be a logical path to go down. And I think one of the added benefits of it is it does open the door for, we'll call it like Crew Dragon type aborts, especially once they get ships that have the 6 RVACs on it. That definitely opens up the door for that. So I think it's probably not the driven design goal, but something that's come about as an advantage of some other design decisions.
Excellent input. Thanks, Ryan. I want to thank 2 final super chat donations. Jeff S. Jones, $5. Awesome job, people. And Drew Nar, a question with a $5 Canadian super chat. What's your thoughts on the future of Starship in Florida, since they seem to be moving all the buildings and equipment to Boca Chica. Basically, what are your thoughts on the future of Starbase in Florida, since they seem to be moving all the buildings and equipment here to Boca Chica?
So right now, Starbase is the development site for Starship. So I think they are just waiting until everything is mostly done and sure that it will work to start building there in Cape Canaveral. So that will be my guess. Like just waiting until everything works out and then start rushing there too.
Yeah,
What do you
I
all
would
think?
agree with. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think they started building some stuff in Florida maybe before they had a good idea of how everything was going to work, and we're kind of seeing the outcome of that as they kind of remove some of the infrastructure they had started developing there to Starbase. They're still trying to figure out how to build a system that works. Obviously, with the first flight, we saw the foundation under the launch mount disintegrate, and they've since done some massive upgrades and included some new systems that they kind of had started at 39A, but I think there's kind of possibly a bigger operation that's going to go on there to possibly bring that pad up to a more current design, similar to something that we see here at Starbase. But they're still learning how to make this system work. And I think kind of focusing all of their infrastructure and their manpower here in Starbase right now is what's going to allow them to get a working system, or at least a working proof of concept that they can deal with and kind of modify minimally going forward. And that's probably pretty important to have before they go and kind of put all of their eggs in one basket, in Florida on a system that may or may not work, correctly the first couple times. I really want to make sure that it's working here in Texas at Starbase first before they take it to 39A.
Right on. I've got one final question from Igor Skorzinski. Did you guys see the cutouts on the ship 25 aft section? They look like they are for the skirt purging, similar to what we've seen on the bottom of Booster 9. But he is not sure if you, Zach, can bring it up since it was posted on What About It's Twitter X.
I don't have access to it right now, but yeah, we did see those. And yeah, it seems like they're doing the same thing that they did on the booster, just allowing to actually purge that engine aft section. So good thing to see. I guess it was kind of expected since they did it on the booster. So it does make sense.
That's all I got for you today. So just wanted to give a shout out to one of my favorite little Team Space nerds, Victoria, John Dopker's little one. So this is Astro Joe signing off. Thanks everybody for all your questions and generous donations. Catch you next week throughout the week on Show and Tells and all the different streams. And of course, most importantly, see you right here next week for episode 90.
Awesome. Well, I will not be here for episode 90 next week. So, and also the week after. But I guess that means I'll see you all in about 3 weeks, but the show will still go on. And yeah, maybe I'll make it to the integrated flight test. Maybe not. I guess it depends on what day it actually ends up happening. So fingers crossed on that one. But yeah, definitely wanted to thank Ryan Hansen Space and DJ for helping us out today. Really awesome having you guys on. And with that, I will pass it off to y'all and sign off.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I need to say that this was a dream for me because I started to watch these streams since the really beginning. I learned my English from here, from this program. So
I just
thank
like to
you so much,
reiterate
guys.
that he learned to speak English by listening to Starbase Weekly. That's like awe-inspiring.
That is really
Yeah.
cool, DJ. Awesome to hear. And thanks for joining us, both you and Ryan.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. It's a really great team, and I love you guys. See you.
Mauricio, you here?
Oh yeah, I'm here. And for those that don't know, I don't know if you don't mind me saying, DJ, you're from Argentina. That's correct.
Exactly.
All right. And yeah, thanks so much for everybody for joining us today, the generous donations. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Hopefully we get to see something launch next week. If not, the week after that. Hopefully not too many delays. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
And Ryan, of course. Ryan?
Yep.
Do you want to say bye?
Yes. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a fun time, and it's always it's good to cover these aerial photos and kind of get the latest theories out and the open for discussion.
Well, you guys are all the best. Thank you again for joining us on stream. Everybody watching or listening, we appreciate you greatly. Thank you for your donations. And with that, I'll say main engine cut off, stage separation confirmed. See y'all. Bye.